Hello and welcome to the Miscast table. My name is Måns.
And my name is Jonas. And today we're doing something kind of different. Måns, since you're halfway around the world, and since I'm stuck here in Sweden, we're gonna talk a bit about the hobby.
Yeah, we are. It's difficult to play with the distance, so
Yeah.
we're gonna have to do something else today. And since we have been starting playing a little bit of Warhammer Armies Project, we've gotten the question what we like more about 8th edition, what we like more about WAP, and like the difference between them. So we're gonna touch on that sensitive topic here today, and we are pretty good at talking for long periods of time. If you've been watching the channel,
Yeah.
so we had to make some ground rules to make this work. And what are those ground rules, Jonas?
We thought that we would each make a list of our own 5 top points for each of the game systems. But as we met up, we kind of noticed that we had kind of similar lists. A few points were a bit different, but we kind of decided it would be better to just hash them out and give you a complete list of both of our top 5.
There was no point in doing a separate list each. When we put together all of our points, it was like 6-7 points, like different points, instead of like 5 different from you and 5 different from me. So there was really no point in doing one list each. But as you said, I am in Taiwan, and it's really amazing what you can do with it, with the power of the internet. We can still be talking. But while I've been here, I've also been visiting some stores in Taiwan and looking for new models, new tools, and see what the country has to offer.
I'm kind of envious of you. It's gonna be really cool to see what you bring up when you get back.
Yeah, it's so much fun walking around these stores and seeing so much things you've never seen before. But I bought this really fun model that I'm gonna use for some 40k project. It is a Cupid tank from Meng Miniatures.
Emperor Children or...
Yeah, it's a Valentine's Day special, and it's really cool. And it's actually quite cheap as well. One of these models costs 420 Taiwanese dollars, which is about 140 Swedish crowns, or like $15
that's not too bad actually,
or something. Yeah, not too bad considering what you can pay for Games Workshop if we're gonna go that route.
What are the like local? What do the Taiwanese player play? Do they? I kind of figure that gunplay or whatever it's called, where you have Gundam models, is popular, but
it's Gunpla, I think it's called, and it's just an abbreviation of, I think it's Gundam Plastic Model or something like that.
Okay.
But I'm not sure if it's actually a game system or it's just like models. I'm not really sure. But there's tons of Gundam. It's pretty cheap, and a lot of like World War II stuff as well. I'm not sure if they play or if they just paint them. But I have a few more game stores to visit, and I know one of them is very large for playing. So I'm gonna see if I can look at some local games and see what's happening. So
hope you find some really good like bargains, or like
the dream is just to walk into a store and see like this old
regiments of renown, like discontinued pile, extra price bargain.
Yeah, Tomb Kings and Bretonias new in box. Unlikely, but we got that to look forward to.
Yeah. But we're kind of breaking our own rule set. I just noticed.
Yeah, we are. All right, but should we get into the video, and maybe we can start with Warhammer Fantasy 8th edition, because that's the system that we have played the most on this channel.
Yeah. And starting up, what is the 5th best reason to play 8th edition?
The 5th best reason that we have agreed upon is the movement system. Especially for me, I think the charge system is amazing. And I think the balance between cavalry and infantry movement is really good.
Yeah, it's a big deal of the whole game, and especially part of the reason why I prefer it to other systems. I really like how it's a ongoing, like all the choices you do over the game matter. Like depending on how you start deploying in the setup, carry over to when you are starting making the movements in the first and second phase. And then if you want to get into the third and fourth phase where you have the combats lining up, it's going to be really punishing if you didn't sequence everything correctly and if you didn't plan ahead. So you are really well rewarded for actually putting in the effort and thinking those things through.
Yeah, I have to agree with everything you said. And I think the movement phase together with the list building phase, if you can call it that, are the most important phases of the game, I think. Most of the games are decided in the movement, in my opinion.
Yeah, and setting up those good charges for an upcoming turn, blocking so that you really put the opponent in a tough spot. Do I dare to go into their arc? Am I within range? Can I risk getting charged here?
Yeah.
And on the other hand, it's also really fun when you are at the opposite side and you...
Yeah, you can easily put yourself in a bad spot in the movement phase. But if we talk about like why movement is good in 8th edition, it's quite easy to get into like why is movement good in 8th edition compared to WAP in my opinion. When you charge, for example, you have your own movement plus 2d6, and with Swift Stride you have your own movement plus 3d6, but you choose the two highest. If we compare that for example Warhammer Armies Project, you roll 1d6. No, you roll 2d6 plus your own movement, but you pick the highest. If you have Swift Stride but below movement 7, you roll 2d6 plus your movement. And if you have movement above 7, you roll 3d6 and discard the lowest plus your movement. And this makes cavalry incredibly strong. Or like high movement stuff with Swift Stride become incredibly strong because of this. And the like chicken game you have, like in 8, you inch forward to see who's gonna dare get the charge and gonna try with the charge. That game kind of dies when you have a cavalry unit against a infantry unit, because the infantry has no chance.
And if you compare it to earlier versions, you had an issue where you might come up in scenarios where both players were really heavily penalized for failing the charge, meaning that you got into those really long, boring stalemates. But I think 8th edition is in a good spot. There are values to getting having high movement. Equipping a Swift Stride banner onto your cavalry, giving them one additional movement, isn't game breaking, but it's nice.
Yeah, I think as you said, it's like the movement is good in 8 because it's you have advantages for having high movement, and you get advantages for Swift Stride and so on. But it's quite balanced. I think the advantage is a bit too strong, maybe in WAP, for example.
Because certain units are never going to be able to like make the charge other than as like a flanking unit, whilst other units such as the ogres with their movement 6, they have such an advantage over others.
Yeah. So yeah, the movement is 8 in 8 is great. The movement in 8 is great. That's a good slogan.
Yeah, that's moving on.
The fourth point on our list is it's like a mix of things, but it's the lore aspect of the game, and the fact that there are like official Games Workshop, both books, lore, stories, and it's an official Games Workshop rule set. And that means that you have all of these old amazing models, you have these old rule books, the army books, the lore, and everything surrounding it that you can, that gives like life to the world, and that you can collect.
All the stuff that is written in the army books is great. I really like the Gothrek and Felix books, and all the stuff that is like part of the lore, but that there are also a good deal of things that are left unexplained, unexplored. There are things that you can imagine when you are setting up your campaign, and you can work within the universe to set up a really compelling story where you have the like Cathay region or Nippon or Ind areas of the world which are not really that explored. You have all the stuff about the great old ones, chaos not really being all that
you
well
have
known.
like having a good, well explained base of a world. Like they have so much lore about so many things, and the ground rules and everything for the world is in place. But there's also, like you said, a lot of like open ends, and discussing open ends of the lore is a great addition to the game. Like the mystery of things elevates it, in my opinion. And I myself, I have like a habit of collecting things.
Yeah.
I have the Warhammer Underworlds, I collect everything, and I have like watches, and I like collecting stuff. That's part of my like personality, and 8th edition really ticks those boxes for me, because you have all these old models, you have the old books, and yeah, all of that stuff. I can browse eBay and similar sites for for a long time, and pick up probably more stuff than I should, but it's also a really fun part about the hobby for me as well.
Yeah, but it's like we're gonna get into a similar notice about the game being stable, but there is a stable market as well. Like you can like basically invest in Warhammer, like buying old metal models. They retain a good deal of their value, so you are not like, if you want to swap around armies, there is a good second-hand value on most stuff. So it's a good like collector's market.
There is. I bought my Tomb games like 2 years ago, and they have like doubled in value probably, in like that short amount of time. So
yeah, and even if not all models double in value, you can still like move them around, trade them around, and get to the armies that you want to. So it's a friendly community for buying and selling, and there's plenty of deals to be made.
It's an active market, and that's really nice.
Yeah. Yeah, and then we get into one of the things that is kind of unique to 8th edition, perhaps not when comparing it to WAP, but it is that you get really good scale on things. When you set up on the table, you get good sized armies, and they actually feel like armies. You have those rank and file soldiers, and there are plenty of them. They are taking up the whole side of your board, and you are matching them against an equally like scaled army to fight against. You get that sense of proportionality that I think is good for a figure wargaming system.
I think so too. Compare, like, not hating on like the Age of Sigmar and stuff like that, but that feels more like a skirmish game, even though it's not a skirmish game in Games Workshop like book, but it when you play with this like big movement trays and like that, it feels like these massive armies clashing rather than just a small like warband of things clashing. And that
like seeing a single model, regardless of how cool the model in of itself might be, I think it pales in comparison to seeing like this whole setup of like 100 models lined up in square rows. It just looks the way the game was once imagined to be played.
Yeah, and this is one of those things like when we say like the scale is good in 8, it's also good in WAP. This is not like this is strictly better or like this is one of the things that's good about 8, but it could also apply to WAP, and in this case it definitely does.
But we had other top 5s for WAP.
Yeah, we did. We had other top 5s. And number 2 is one of my favorite things, and it's number 2, I guess. So that makes sense. But we
goes to show.
But we have the terrain rules and the random terrain rules, and also the scenario rules.
And I think that it is a good thing about the game, which gives it a good deal of replayability. Each time you meet up with a friend and you put down a new scenario rule, or you play one of the 6 in the book, then you are still putting up terrain that wholly fundamentally changes how you want to play your army. If there is a big impassable terrain piece that you need to work around, or is there some mystical monument that is going to affect like the rules for your units, that is going to be things that you want to like try to think around on the fly. And having that randomness factor means that you really need to like make use of it in the moment.
Yeah.
Or try to make sure that your opponent doesn't make use of it.
Yeah, I think that Warhammer Fantasy 8th edition has the best terrain rules of any game out there. Like when you have all the mystical monuments, the forest, the random terrain, all of that stuff, it is way better than all of the other games that GW produces, in my opinion. There are some problems when you have terrain and like movement trays and you can't utilize them in the same way, but the way they've done terrain in 8th edition is amazing. And one of the things I missed most when playing Warhammer Armies Project was the random terrain placement rule. I think that is a great addition.
And adding to that, it's kind of like the book gives a good frame of reference. So if you want to make your own like arcane structures or terrain pieces, you are kind of guided in how you would think about making new stuff up. Like if you want to have your own orc monument and give it special rules, there are plenty of opportunity to do so.
Yeah.
Just follow like the same principles as that has been used for all the other stuff.
Yeah. And if you look like now we go into the WAP versus 8 a little bit again, but if you look at like WAP, they say first you place the terrain you want to use. Rules are not strict here, but a good guideline, and they explain like in 5 sentences how you're supposed to place the terrain, and that you should place one terrain piece for every square, or like 24 times 24 inches, stuff like that. But I think when you place terrain in that kind of way, I think the tables that you produce, if you call it that, are quite similar to each other. And the thing with random terrain is that it is random, and that makes it super interesting, because every game you play and every game board that you build is somewhat unique. And you could of course do that when you're just placing terrain, but you don't.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not that innovative, I guess. But with that, should we move on to our final point of
why you should out there should play.
Alright, so we have arrived at point number 1, and this might be a surprise to someone. Some people might not think that this is a good thing, but for me it definitely is. And that is that it's dead or discontinued, you can call it eternal, official GW rule set. And what do we mean by that?
When you become interested in 8th edition, you are going to know what kind of rules that you have to adhere to. You are fully able to read up on all the armies that are out there. You can plan out in advance what you want to build. Everything is there, and you don't need to worry about Games Workshop pushing a release that fundamentally changes your army, so that you halfway into collecting it need to change.
The rules will never change. Like if you learn the rule set, those are the rules you're gonna have to play with. And the same with army books and all that. And getting shiny new things is fun. Like it is fun to get new rules and new models and all of that. But it's also really nice that the rules always stay the same. Like it's a balancing act, and especially if you don't.
And it's a good rule set that doesn't really need all that much work. If you have learned the rules, you can focus your playtime on actually playing the game or painting your models, or like when you meet up, you don't need to look up stuff, or you don't need to worry about changing out your list because there is some new hot stuff that you need to be able to deal with.
Yeah, and I mean, if you look at like Age of Sigmar or Warhammer Underworlds or 40k, there is receive new stuff all the time. And new stuff, of course, is fun, but if you're a player, like a casual player that don't play that often, maybe you can play like once a month or something like that. And if you buy a new book and learn the new rules, then they maybe have changed like 6 months after. And that's not very fun. So like the more you play, the more fun a changing of rules can be. But the more like casual you are, I guess you could say, or the less you play, I think a stable rule set is a lot better.
I kind of like it as well. I think that being able to, like, we have a tournament coming up that we started to learn about in February, and that gave me half a year to plan ahead and like, okay, I want to build these things. And with like being middle-aged, and you don't really have all that much spare time as you used to have. So being able to plan it ahead a good deal in advance really adds to like why I feel comfortable making the purchases that I need to do, and like I can plan out my painting ahead of schedule so that I actually can force myself to produce something. And I think that's a strong point for 8th edition.
I think it's a really strong point, because we've been talking about going, or at least I've been talking a little bit with Johnny about going to an Age of Sigmar tournament. And I'm not at home at all with Age of Sigmar. I'm not good at the game, and I don't know that much about the game. But I think it's fun. But the thing is, like, if I decide to purchase something now, and then the rules change, like, I don't have enough time to paint new models or, like, change my game plan. Like, the purchase I do now, that's the thing I'm gonna have to play with in 6 months, period. Because I don't have time to change it up. But that's never gonna be a problem.
Yeah, and for some people that is fine. Like, you can easily get into a good playgroup where you get a good experience and you bring what you have and you duke it out and have a good time. But part of us might be in that, like, spike territory where we don't necessarily need to win, far from it, but it's good to try to aspire to win. So knowing that there are things that you need to buy in order to be, like, get the good list going, and not having time for it is a kind of turn off. I have a time accepting it.
Yeah, I agree. But those are our top 5 points why you should play 8th edition, or what makes 8th edition great.
A superb game.
Yeah, it's a fantastic game. It is. So should we take a look at Warhammer Armies Project?
Yeah. Let's head straight into, like, what is the 5th strong point about Warhammer Armies Project?
We have the first thing, which is war machines, and
it's kind of fun that it was the 5th point on both of our lists, meaning it was the first thing that come to mind.
Yeah, it was, and this is one of those things, like, it's great in WAP because it's not that great in 8th. They're a bit problematic.
It's fine in 8th, but it's better, and it's one of the strong points about choosing this game system.
And not all.
I think when you compare it to any game system,
that must not all war machines,
but cannons.
Yeah, cannons. We agree on that.
The system for it in Warhammer Armies Project is that when setting up to fire a cannon, you do not get to choose any point anywhere on the table within line of sight. Instead, you pick a model that you have line of sight to, and then you roll both a scatter die and then a distance die, so that you get to roll both dice at the same time, shortening the process for firing, and then you get a much fairer result where you don't need to, like, say 7 inches from the back, because 7 is like a ideal number to roll in other 8th edition.
Yeah.
You just streamline it, and you add a good amount of randomness, which is well needed to make it fair.
Yeah, cannons was super strong, especially against monsters and stuff in 8th edition, or is very strong in 8th edition. But there's also other fixes, like there's a minimum of 12 inches range with the cannon now, so you can't fire with the cannon if on something that's within 12 inches. And you also cannot pivot freely and move. Like before, you could just spin it around and it could shoot anywhere, and it didn't count as moving.
Yeah, so if you had an ambusher coming up from behind, it just
turn around.
Grape shot.
Yeah, it was absolutely, or it is absolutely disgusting. But war machines are good, but I'm gonna just put this in here. I think the rest of the shooting is better in 8 still. And that might be something people want to debate me on.
On that part, we actually disagree, but we were in full agreement about cannons.
Yeah, and I'm playing Dark Elves, and we don't have any cannons, and we have plenty of shooting. But I think my shooting becomes too strong in 8. No, in WAP, I mean. But that's maybe a separate question. But the war machines are definitely fixed. To the better, I must say.
Yeah, I think so.
I can bring my giant.
That's a good
finally.
point for. Yeah. So if you are playing 8th edition and you really like it, but you think that cannons are like you got issues with it because you can't bring your drag onto the table, or you are penalized when you bring your big stone horns,
hydras and stuff.
They have an easier time.
I don't think dwarves are pretty happy about this change, but otherwise it's great stuff.
Yeah,
I'm happy with it.
Okay, so for the 4th point, we have contrary to 8th edition, we have that it is an ongoing fan-made system. There are new content being published, there are rules balances to the game, and there are some fine-tuning that is like credit to where credit's due. That the people behind Warhammer Armies Project are putting in a good deal of like their own time to make this a really, really good game system. And I'm always happy to see that there has been an update on the website.
Yeah, and I think
not that it happens all that often, but
yeah, but it does happen. I think this is the best way of handling a rule set, like having a living rule book that you update continuously. I think GV should take some pointers here and make like a living rule book system. That said, this is like
they are in a tough spot because they want to push new stuff as well.
Yeah, and they want to sell books and all that stuff. So they're a company, and I get that, I guess. But for the consumer, it's really nice to have this kind of system. And I think that, like you said before, we talked about the fact that Warhammer 8th edition is very, very stable and not much news or no new stuff happens. But on the contrary, you have like an ongoing project like.
But this is a stable system as well. Like the things that are added are either completely new, so that there is a completely like new army book added, and then they might see some like initial balance changes, but more so than that there are like fundamental changes to the army list. You might get some fine tuning where there was some oversight in the initial rules, or there was some like stat that needed to be rebalanced by a few points or whatever.
Yeah, there's not like there's new like core rules, like everything has changed. It's not like that. They make like small changes clarifying things in the core rule book, or like small changes that was problematic, but the basics stay the same. That is true. But it's also nice that you have like continuous balancing, especially for the people that come from systems like Age of Sigmar or 40k that are used to getting new stuff. You can get the same thing here, but with square bases instead. And
for the third point, why you should play Armies Project is the addition of unit strength. It's a. Would you talk us through what it is, Måns?
Yeah, and I think this is a great change from 8th edition. I think this adds a lot. And unit strength is basically like a value that you give to your unit based on the models and the number of models that is comprised of. And it's used for stuff like line of sight. They give them line of sight values. It's used when fleeing, pursuing. It's decided if you're steadfast or not, and stuff like that. And it makes it a lot easier to determine these things that in 8th edition maybe are determined by ranks and number of models, and this is a lot fairer system. And I think especially for me, for line of sight, it makes a huge difference. Like with shooting and stuff, it's a lot clearer in my opinion, and I really like this edition.
Yeah, I agree as well. I think it is an interesting way of solving that, so you don't only count how many ranks do you have. Instead, you can take into consideration that these units are bigger, or this monster is more fierce than what they are facing off against. And like get a needed fine-tunement to combat.
Yeah, and it's like if you compare to like 8, for example, when you flee and you pursue and you catch up to them, the unit is destroyed. Even if you have like 3 zombies catching up to 500 horsemen, they're still destroyed, the 500 horsemen. But in WAP instead you count the unit strength of the pursuer times 2, and that's the number of wounds they take. And the same goes if you flee through an enemy unit, you also take their unit strength in wounds without saves, instead of taking dangerous strain like in 8th. And I think all of those changes are good.
You do get around having your horde army being run down by one lone direwolf, which isn't a particularly great experience. Or like
yeah, it doesn't make like any sense either. Like if 3 zombies catch up to like 50 horsemen, there's no way they can like kill all of them in like a realistic sense. Like it doesn't make any sense.
No, instead I think this army's unit strength is a really good clever addition to what makes WAP a good system. The next really good thing about WAP is the addition of all those new army books and the addition of new units to the game. It's a kind of contrarian point, like considering what we've just been talked about, but somehow it ended up being on both of our lists.
Yeah, but it's like if you like one thing or the other. Like if you enjoy the stableness of 8th, that's great. If you enjoy the new shiny stuff, then WAP is for you.
Yeah.
So it depends on what kind of player you are, I guess.
Yeah, but it is not only like new shiny stuff. There are like plenty of support for relic units. Like I really like Dogs of War. They got their own functioning system in Warhammer Armies Project, making them a much more viable army to build and collect compared to 8th edition. Then you have some of the really stuff that never really gotten their own warbook. You can play the Celts, or you can play the Nippon, or you can play Norseman. There are so many different army books in Warhammer Armies Project that if you have a cool idea, you can either use one of the existing ones, or you can even like put in the effort and build your own.
Yeah, and I think it's super fun, like getting these new and different armies. Like you, only the imagination is the limit, I guess. And like building up to release, you know that the release is gonna come, like they say beforehand and all that stuff, and then when they release the book, and the time up until release is really fun in my opinion, because you have like speculation and talking and all of that stuff, and you get that here in a sense as well. And it makes the game, like, I don't know exactly on the top of my head how many armies you can play in 8th edition. Maybe it's 10, maybe it's 12, something like that. But in WAP there's way more, and there's way more coming as well. And a small like thing we should touch on when we talk about like the rules and this system is that there are some problematic rules in 8th edition that have been fixed in WAP. Like there are some balancing things.
Yeah.
Things that we solve in our play group with like gentlemen's agreements, but it's nice to have them in print, because there's always gonna be like communities and people that are they're gonna play the rules to the letter and be that guy, I guess.
It's fine, I guess, but it makes for a better experience if you don't have to get into that area from the get-go.
Yeah, the less you have to like house rule, the better, in my opinion, because there's the best thing if you can use the official rules as much as possible.
Well, not better per se, but it's easier. Like you can easier get to an agreement of what kind of game you want to play if you have official rules for it.
Yeah, and especially if you have like
I kind of like house
competitive
rules. I think they're.
Yeah, I can enjoy house rules as well, but especially like when you have a competitive community. Those people like really use the rule book, and it's
and especially if you play against people that you don't normally meet on a day-to-day or week-to-week basis.
Yeah.
You need to find some common ground, and like having official rules is one way of doing it.
Yeah, because our local association arranges tournaments, and there's no rule saying that you need to be in the association to participate in the tournaments. And we don't always have rules for those things that we see as gentlemen's agreements. So someone could show up with a really dirty list.
Yeah, but I think we are amongst the luckiest Warhammer gaming groups out there. Like everyone in the group is a good sport, and I don't know why that is. It's just something that is.
Yeah, and that makes me really happy. But if you want to have a lot of new stuff to play with, a lot of new armies and lots of new stuff coming, then I guess Warhammer Armies Project is for you.
Yeah, but let's touch on the best reason to playing Armies Project.
Yeah,
and I was in agreement here as well. I think this is one of the major upgrades to WAP.
Yeah, this is one of those things again where we're pitting 8 against WAP, but this is too good not to talk about.
But even compared to anything, I think it's still a good system.
Yeah, it is a better system than... It's the best system of the GV games, if you can call this a GV game, I guess. And that is the Magic system. And it has been, in my opinion, massively upgraded.
Yeah, like fundamentally, the first difference is that you don't get to like add wizard level as a bonus to the dice roll outright. Instead, you have it. So if you have a level 4 wizard, you add 2 to the roll. If you have a level 3, you add 2 as well. And if you have a level 1 or 2, you add 1. So you are decreasing the strength of the effect of adverse effect of not bringing level 4 wizard to the game. You can bring more wizards that are low levels and still have a good enough chance of dispelling.
Yeah, I agree. In one end of the spectrum, you are, because you don't get as much bonus for casting because of wizard levels, and that makes like level 4 wizards a bit nerfed, you could say. But since you cannot cast as many dice as you want when casting a spell, that also depends on your wizard level. The like effect of wizard levels has also been buffed in another sense.
Yeah, you are allowed to use wizard level plus 2 dice. So if you want to cast a spell and you have a level 2 wizard, you are allowed to use 4 dice, and if you're a level 4 wizard, you are allowed to use the full 6 maximum amount of dice when casting a spell.
Yeah.
So you don't get the absolute maximum values of like adding plus 4 to the roll, but instead you get to use more dice and you get to add 2 to the roll, which is still sufficient, but the opponent gets a chance to like dispel it or allocate the dispel dice to make meaningful choices. And you also have, there are so many things. Yeah. It's hard to attack this subject, Måns.
But one of the most important things, in my opinion, is the way you get to choose spells now. So instead, like in 8th edition, you roll for spells, but you are allowed to choose your signature spell if you want, and if you roll a double or something, you can pick whatever you want. But in WAP, you get to choose the same amount of spells as your wizard level, and you're not allowed to choose all spells if you're a level 1 wizard. But if you are a level 4, you can choose all of them. And this is super important in my opinion, because sometimes you really need a certain spell, and if you didn't get it at the start of the game, or you get like a really bad roll on the spells, it was basically like you were starting the game from the back foot, so to speak, and you had to choose spell lores that had good signature spells. But that's not really a fun way of doing it.
Well, it's a different way of doing it, at least. But with this way, you can much more plan ahead. When you are building a list and you want a specific magic, you can allocate points so that you have the correct wizard level and sufficiently build around it. If you want, when I build my armies, I tend to bring the Flaming Swords of Ruin, which adds bonus to weapons when in combat. And then I know that I will be able to have it in the magic phase, and I can like build around it.
Yeah.
And I agree, it's a great upgrade.
Yeah, because it reduces the randomness in the list building. Because sometimes you pick like a spell lore and like, if I get this or this or this, I'm gonna be fine. If I get this, I'm screwed. But when you can choose it from the get-go, it's actually really nice. There's also another change that when you channel power die, you channel 1d6, or you roll a d6 for every wizard level, both when channeling for power dice and the spell die. And the spell you get on 6s, and channel you get on 5s and 6s. And that makes sense, because why should a level 4 wizard channel as little as a level 1 wizard, for example?
Yeah, and it also balances itself out, because the opponent can counteract your channeling by bringing lots of small wizards, or like so it is both like something that you take into account when you build a list, but it is fair in a sense of ways.
Yeah.
You're not forced to like include that level 4 wizard for dispelling if you want to have a competitive list, I think.
Yeah. So yeah, the
with this system.
Yeah. So the magic is a huge upgrade. There's one thing I don't like. Do you know what that is?
No, I don't.
I don't like.
Kind of like most things.
Yeah, I dislike the way miscasts work, because I like the fact that you should be able to get sucked into the warp like this. That adds a lot of.
But I think it's kind of cooler this way. One of the feels bad things about 8th edition was that if you got a really unlucky miscast, then your wizard could be removed outright from the game. This time you can somewhat affect it if you are cautious about having your wizard deleted by the warp. Then you can use fewer dice, because when you get the miscast, you get it when you have a result of double ones.
Yeah.
In WAP.
But it's nice because it gets your heart beating when you have the risk of miscast looming over your head every time.
And then when you roll those really powerful spells that you use the full 6 dice, then when you roll on the miscast table, you add to the roll the amount of dice spent to cast the spells. And I think that kind of makes sense in a Warhammer fashion and lore setting. The more power you use, the more at risk of getting adverse effects from the warp you should be.
Yeah.
So I think it makes like both sense in a game sense and a lore sense.
Yeah, I have to agree on that. I just think it's fun when it happens and when things go south. But I also dislike that the game can be decided in a single dice roll as well. So I must agree. But the magic is superb in Warhammer Armies Project.
Yeah, I agree. I think that is like the strongest point for me as well. I really like it, and I that said, I do play in Khorne, and I do play which don't really have that much spellcasting going. But the ogres, which are not like the best spellcasters either, but I think that they make that phase so much more fun.
Yeah.
And even with all this added complexity, it doesn't take that much more time actually. I think it's the opposite. I think that in 8th edition, the magic phase tends to take more time.
Yeah.
Somehow. I don't know why that is, but
I think in my opinion they're about the same, I guess. The reason why they can go quicker in WAP is because you've already chosen the spells and you can already have read up on them and know like exactly what they do.
That might be true.
So
that might be the case.
Yeah. But that is the list for both of our lists for why you should play both Warhammer Armies Project and Warhammer 8th edition. And I just want to like talk about something that like when we posted our first Warhammer Armies Project video onto Reddit, I said something along the lines of I think that these two game systems are so similar that it hardly makes it worth like swapping between them. And one of the comments I got on that video was along the lines of like, how come that you think that? Like, I think the changes are massive, and both of the games like play completely differently. And that kind of stuck with me, I guess, because while it is true that like 95% of the rules are exactly the same, and if you've learned one of the game systems, you can easily like switch between one or the other. But the changes are also significant enough that they impact list building quite massively, I must say. And I also play quite differently when I play 8th edition or WAP. So the game modes are really similar, but also really different. Does that make sense? Like,
in a way, I might not fully comprehend exactly what you're going for, but I think I get the gist of it. They are like if you want to take it to the next level, so that if you are a competitive player and you really put into playing a good deal and good amount of games, then you are gonna notice like the things that matter, and you're gonna like take that with you and adjust your game styles. That you might end up liking one system over the other. But when you are just a casual player, then it might not be all that obvious at like when you start out. You might like get the good experience of meeting up with friends and having rolled some dice and clashed your armies into one of the other, and then you might not like fully like dwell too long on what the rules difference were, because they are sufficiently similar at the same time as they are fundamentally different.
Yeah,
if that makes any sense.
Yeah, because when you read like through the changes, they don't seem that big, and they are not that big, but they do also make a difference when playing. You have this saying in Swedish like många bäckar små, and I'm not sure how you translate that. Like many small streams form a great river, or something
everything
like that.
Counts in large amounts.
Yeah,
I think.
and meaning like a small change in of itself might be really insignificant, but a lot of small changes make a big change. And I guess that's kind of the outcome here, I would say. But in like, we've been talking about this like 8th edition or WAP and all that, which system is better. And for me, it's like, I like them both. If someone's told me like, yeah, do you want to play a game of Warhammer Fantasy? And I was like, yeah. And they said, oh, can we play WAP? I would be sure. Yeah, of course we can. And it will be the same for 8. Like, do you want to play it? Yeah, of course. I think both are really fun.
Yeah, I agreed. I think so as well. They, on a like side note, I think that they complement each other. If you have the group for it, like we do here, I think that it's a good thing that you can play both. Yeah. Because I'm more than happy to roll up 8th edition, and I still consider it my primary system. I feel more comfortable with the rules in it, and I think that I have a better understanding or starting to get a better understanding on how my armies function in it. Yeah. But that said, I do really enjoy some of the good points about WAP, making it so that if someone wants to play it, I'm all game for it.
Yeah. I agree. I think that's good to say, like they complement each other, and I have to agree on that, because there are some things that are better in WAP. There are some things that I think are better in 8th edition, and if you can just swap between the two systems, that's fine. And if I were to move somewhere and they were playing one of the systems or like over the other, I would be fine either way. So I'm probably gonna keep playing both for now. And I hope people weren't expecting like a proclamation that 8 is so much better or WAP is so much better, because I think I can't really make a statement like that, because I enjoy both in different ways.
Yeah, but well put, I think.
Yeah. But I guess that ends our discussion about this topic for now. Maybe we'll dwell deeper into this sometime. But it was fun.
Yeah, it's a fun interlude video. We thought we'll put this up on the channel between games, and hopefully we'll have Måns back here soon enough so that we can get into some more proper 8th edition games, or Warhammer Armies Project, or if we're gonna play Underworlds, or perhaps get into what happens in the New World. Yeah, we definitely we're definitely going to do that very, very soon. And we have a tournament coming up also, Warhammer Fantasy 8th edition, Swedish comp. I feel the part about the tournament, I have a limit where I need to paint one model each day, or I think it's gone up to 1.2 models each day. But I'm gonna make it, definitely. Yeah, not sure I'm gonna make it. I'm gonna paint like 3 models a day or something like that if I'm gonna have to make it. So it's gonna be rough. But yeah, I guess we will see you all when I'm in the next video. Yeah, in the next video. So I hope you enjoyed this, and if you did, like and subscribe and comment what you think about the different systems. And we'll see you all in the next one.